So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Brandon Stiles. I'm one of the ROPES, which is the Regional Overdose Prevention Specialist for the state of Tennessee.
Tell me a little bit about what your life used to be like, Brandon.
So I grew up in a good family. I grew up playing football. And then as far back as I can remember, it was just me and my mom. I had a stay-at-home mom. My dad, my real dad, went to federal prison when I was 1 for robbing a bank. My stepdad stepped up, and I grew up with him in my life. I grew up just playing football, and I can remember my stepdad working for Circuit City, if you can remember Circuit City.
I do.
And he ended up getting a promotion to district manager, and he had to choose either between going to Chattanooga or going to Hawaii. And he chose Chattanooga because I remember him talking about how he didn't want to be on an island surrounded by water, right? So we moved to Chattanooga. It was good for about a year there. And then they got on drugs, and he ended up getting fired for selling TVs to somebody that people were bringing back. And then we ended up moving back to Knoxville.
How old were you at that point?
12 or 13.
Okay.
Yeah. We ended up moving in with my aunt, which the best way to describe that is a drug house, is a trap house. The radio stayed on 24/7, and if you knocked on the door, somebody was going to serve you, right? So it was like that for a couple of years. I didn't get signed back into school that first year. So the following year, I ended up being signed back in. They wouldn't allow me to go into high school like I was supposed to because I didn't finish my 8th grade year. So I had to redo the 8th grade, or start over and do the 8th grade year. And then my mom ended up going to prison when I was 15 for payroll fraud. And then my stepdad went to prison just before that because they went to rob somebody and they ended up killing him. So they ended up catching them because that same day they caught the truck on fire and sat and watched it burn because they were so high. So I ended up with my grandmother, who just did the best she can. I ended up turning 18 in the 10th grade, and they sent me to an adult high school, and then the adult high school told me that I didn't have to be there anymore because I was 18. So I ended up you learn really quick in that situation that there's the have and the have-nots, right? So which one are you gonna be? So everybody that was around me was selling drugs. It was easy money. Nobody worked a job beside my grandmother, right? So I just fell into that way of life. When I was 18, I ended up meeting someone that I worked with and developed a relationship with her and her husband. And then a couple of years later, when I was 20, that's when my addiction started, right? So I ended up being introduced to what they were calling the pill mills, right? So her husband ended up getting out of jail and took me to Jacksonville, helped me get into the clinic. I went with them a few times and then found out that I could take myself. So I started taking myself and going down to the pain clinics, and we would hit doctors in Atlanta, Jacksonville, Tampa, St. Petersburg, right? And that way of life continued for a while. And then the DEA stepped in and put serial numbers on all the scripts, and it stopped all that pretty quick. So that way of life continued. And then I learned really quick that I had a lifestyle I couldn't manage, and I learned that I had an addiction, right? At that point, it was just life. We were just living life. And then that was the first time I started going through withdrawals, was after they did all that, and I was probably 22, 23. And then life just didn't ever get better. I just stayed in the streets, and life just continued to go that way, right? And then when I was 26, I was riding around with some girl, and she set me up to get robbed. Mm-hmm. And the guys jumped me One of them stabbed me in the leg 3 times while we were fighting, and another guy hit me in the back of the head with brass knuckles.
Wow.
So they didn't get what they wanted, and I ended up knocking one of them out. So he took his friend, put him in the back of the Tahoe when they left, right? So at this point, I was so lost, which I laugh about it now, right? But I was so lost that I said, God, I don't know if you're real, but if you are real and you're going to try to take my leg from me, you can at least let me get hit by a car so I can get Opanis, right?
Okay.
3 weeks.
Killers?
Yes.
Okay.
So 3 weeks later, I was at the strip club celebrating my 27th birthday, right? We ended up getting in a fight in the strip club, and I got ran over in the parking lot.
Wow.
So there was a whole lot to that situation, but I ended up being ran over in the parking lot and went to UT, and I had a fractured femur, torn MCL, fractured 3 ribs, fractured my shoulder blade, fractured my jaw, and had a concussion.
Wow.
So I didn't get Opanis, I got Hydro 5s, obviously, because that's insane to think that I would get that. But when I think about it now, so when I was raised Baptist, right? So when that happened, the only thing that made sense to me in that moment was obviously God did this, right? I asked for a sign. This is what happened, right? And I wholeheartedly believed it. The only problem was so I'm still going forward too quick. So there was a moment where I woke up from a nap 3 days after this, right? And I let my leg in an immobilizer, and I woke up from a nap. And I can remember waking up and feeling here something saying inside of me, saying, you asked for this, you asked for this, you asked for this. And I remember that because I said out loud, I didn't ask for anything. Right? I didn't ask for this. I remember saying that, but I felt that, right? And then it was like an aha moment, like kind of like a spiritual awakening moment.
Yeah.
And I did ask for this. I've learned to be really careful what you ask for.
Right.
Right? So I've never worded anything that way again. But no one will ever be able to steal that experience from me. Right? From that moment forward, I knew that there was something way bigger than myself that I did not understand that's present.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
is that when things began to change, or no? You
No.
just had an awareness at that point.
so I think both.
Okay.
I think that it wouldn't matter what anyone said to me at that point, right? I was aware of something bigger than myself, right? Because it came from here,
Right.
right? It's already within me, right? So at that point, so that's why I said that other part, right? So at that point, the only understanding that I knew of a power greater than myself was through that faith, right? So it's kind of disappointing, right? Was that I would go to churches and I would speak to people that shared that same faith, and undoubtedly, every single one of them told me, my God would never do that to you.
Wow.
Every single one of them.
Wow.
And I didn't really understand it at that point, right? Because I had other people telling me that were closer to that faith, that the only thing that I had an understanding of in that moment had nothing to do with that moment, right? So that was when I started to expand my understanding of what a higher power even looks like, because I have this very real experience,
Yes.
right? So I also know that someone else's perception of their reality has nothing to do with my current reality and my experiences, right? So I've started to lean into meditation, and I fell in love with meditation, right? Just being present with myself. I learned the Buddhist principles. I learned, I researched a bunch of different faiths, and they all basically said the same thing. Treat others the way you want to be treated, right? And to help people, right? Like that was the gist of anything that I looked into. So that was like what I guess what other people would describe as what they describe it as either church hurt or there's another word for it. But that's the one that's present on that's resting on me.
And that's a very common thing. And I want to tell you, I'm sorry that people said that to you.
Thank you.
Because it's not okay. Because absolutely God will allow us to go through pain if it gets us seeking and searching for Him, right? Mm-hmm. And so, I know churches that would say that though. And so I'm just apologizing on their behalf that you had to go through that, because what a confusing time when you know something and someone's telling you, no, that's not that. So I'm sorry that you went through that.
Thank you. I think it needed to happen that way, right? So it allowed me to broaden my understanding of whatever I thought I understood, right? And to seek and to even look at myself as who do I identify as, right? So that continued. Obviously, I was still using and I was still out there for a couple on and off. I went through homelessness. While I was homeless, I really wasn't using that much because I couldn't afford it. Right. So I spent a few years out there doing that. And then in 2018, the mother of my child caught charges and went to jail. She went to prison. My mom violated drug court and went to prison. My best friend at the time sold drugs to somebody and went to prison. And my little brother got caught up and got 4 conspiracy charges, a money laundering charge, and a gun charge, and got 25 years in federal prison. So all of that happened at the same time, like at the end of 2018, going into 2019. And then, no, that was at the end of 2019. So those 2 years, 2018, 2019. And then I caught an aggravated charge at the beginning of 2020. And that was when COVID was happening, so there was a lot going on. And that was the first time I ever tried the MAT program. So I tried getting on MAT. And then whenever my case was done, I went ahead and pled guilty just to get it over with. And I tried to get on MAT because I wasn't seeing him that much and I didn't want to use. And
MAT is medically assisted treatment.
Exactly.
Correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
So that everyone knows what that means. And that's other drugs, right? Legal drugs that help you get off of.
Yeah, so MAT is medication assisted treatment. So it's designed to be a medically proven tool to have a medication that helps you with your cravings,
okay.
Right?
Yep.
I prefer if someone's on that medication, the guys that I work with, if there's counseling involved, mm-hmm. I didn't have the counseling part,
okay.
Right? So I would go in and I would see a doctor and he would tell me, you're going to be on this the rest of your life. Mm. I'll see you next month.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
My probation officer at the time said, you're going to get off this as soon as he found out. He said, it's a crutch. You can't be on it. And I told him that my quality of life is better. I said, I'm making it to work. I'm not using, I'm not selling. Like, my life is better. And he said, you're going to get off of it or you're going to go to jail. So I told my doctor what my probation officer said. And my doctor said, your PO can't tell me what to do. And I said, but he can tell me what to do. So I'm going to need to start tapering off. He said, well, you're not supposed to start tapering off for another 24 months. And I said, he's not going to wait 24 months.
What a tough situation to have two completely different opinions, and both of them like are highly respected, or at least people that you had to listen to, right?
Right.
Wow. Okay. So.
So I decided to go with my PO.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just stopped going cold turkey. And then that lasted a month. I had been on MAT for roughly 6 months, and I had stopped using. I was going to work, everything was good. But since I didn't taper off the way that's suggested, I also forgot. So my little cousin Tyrese was murdered in 2019. So he was murdered 2 weeks before my brother was raided by the FBI.
Wow.
So the anniversary of his death date was rolling around. And I had stopped my Suboxone, and I went to a friend's house because I was grieving, and he had drugs there. So I got right back on the horse right after that. And then my PO told me to come in and to sign some paperwork that I had forgotten to sign. And he asked me if I could pass a drug test. I told him, no, I can't pass a drug test. And then he drug tested me, and I passed it.
Oh.
Yeah. So he asked me what I've been doing. I said, I'm pretty sure I've been snorting heroin. He said, it's not what this says, so I don't even know what I was using, honestly.
Okay.
Because I had used that morning and I passed the drug test, right? So I don't know what I was actually doing. But he said, okay, I'm going to talk to the general and I'll call you in the morning. I left there and got high, and then caught a disturbing the peace, and I woke up in my car 4 hours later to the police pulling me out, and then saying that I had just somebody had called on me, and I had a busted nose and a busted lip, and I was in my car and I didn't remember anything for the past 4 hours. So they arrested me. It was during COVID, so they ROR'd me right back out. And then when my PO called me in the morning, I didn't tell him I went to jail last night because he was telling me that I was going to jail for a VOP. So he had me set at my house till the police came. They came and got me. A month later, I went up for my VOP hearing, and he found out that I went to jail and didn't tell him the truth, so he didn't accept me back on probation. So that was when I was on enhanced, right?
Okay.
So I was sitting there another month and a half-ish, and then that was when DRC came and interviewed me and gave me the chance. And I'm extremely grateful for that opportunity, right?
And tell us about DRC for anyone that doesn't know.
Yeah, so DRC is the Daily Reporting Center, so it's more of a therapeutic approach to probation. So normally state probation before that looked like I show up, I give my PO a check stub or a pay stub, and then I tell them where I'm at, I take a drug test, and I pay my fees and I leave, right? So what DRC did for me, DRC is set up in as a phase probation. What DRC did for me was they instilled the hope in me that I could have a different quality of life, right? And they gave me tools to look at my life. One thing that I remember is that there's 168 hours in a week, right? what is your time going towards, right? And whatever you're giving your time towards, that's what you truly want to do, and that's what you love, right? So it allowed me to sit back and take an audit of what is my time going towards, and what are the things that I actually value, and what are the things that I say that I value, right? If I say that I value a better life, spending time with my family, my physical health, my spiritual health, my emotional health, then how come my time doesn't say that?
That's good.
Right?
Yeah.
And once I actually understood that and I started to apply that, the quality of my life slowly started to get better. So I entered that program in a failed marriage with a 10th grade education. I couldn't keep a job more than 4 months. Had never been able to maintain any amount of clean time without medication over 30 days, right? And I completed that program, graduated the program, completed the program, and then immediately started peer mentoring in that program.
Wow.
And the impression that those counselors and that staff left on me changed the direction of my life forever, right? And one thing that I'll never forget, right, was that I had Judge Swartz, and Judge Swartz at my graduation was up there at the podium talking about how he has a very specific role in the community, right? And he's saying, I don't want to send people to prison, but if you keep it up in front of me, this is just something that I has to do, right? And when I walked up there and I shook his hand and he gave me my certificate, he said, "Thank you for giving me hope." Right?
That's awesome.
And it left an impression on me that helped me understand that the role of that staff and of those programs is to help hold me accountable and to show me a different quality of life, right? And until I took a step back and I was able to hold myself accountable and allow them to show me, right, that there is a different quality of life, there are different things that we can value besides something that just keeps us stuck, right? It's priceless, right? Because there was no light at the end of the tunnel. There was no one day I'm gonna, even though I'm using drugs and selling drugs and I'm doing whatever I want in the streets, right? There's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm gonna end up with the house I want and the relationship I want, with the connection that I want with other people. It doesn't play out that way for me, right?
So never in your life had you thought there was a different path for you, that there was that it could be good without drugs. Never in your life.
No, it didn't make sense.
Wow.
Right? It wasn't even. One thing I always teach my guys now, right, is that if you can't see it for yourself, someone else can't see it for you, right? So making sure that we work on visualizing what is the best version of you look like, right? How do I help you achieve that? What is the quality of life that you want and the relationship that you want with the people you love, right?
Yeah.
How do we take steps in that direction, right? So, but until I could see that for myself, it wasn't feasible, right? Because I would get out and the cycle would start right back, right? I'm so glad that the world is not how I pictured it was before that moment. Before that moment, all I ever seen people as was people just want to use you. You can't trust anybody. Everybody's out for themselves. And that's not the case, right? There are a lot of beautiful, amazing people out here, but I would never allow them to enter my reality because of the way that I was living, right? So it's kind of like the universe protecting other people from me, kind of is how I looked at it now, right? But I'm so glad that's not a real thing. I'm so glad that people aren't the only way that I understood them to be.
Right.
Right.
So would you say that that was the first time you had hope for a future?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, my experience was that once I started to have hope that there is a better quality of life, there is better people, there's a better way to live, that hope slowly turned into strength, right? That allowed me to take the necessary steps that I needed to make to actually create the quality of life that I wanted, that I seen for myself, right? But it all started with hope, man.
Yes. So, okay, so that was 2020. So you're 5 years clean?
So, no. So I have 4 years clean.
4 years,
Yeah.
okay.
So that first year was
Took
when
some
I
time,
spent
okay.
on Enhance, right? That I was still figuring out. I think I was still trying to do it my way.
Yeah, we
Right.
struggle with that sometimes, right? I get
I was
that.
like, obviously I know what's best.
Obviously.
Right. But
But 4 years clean.
yeah,
That's amazing.
thank you.
Congratulations.
It's the life that I wanted for myself 4 years ago doesn't even touch the life that I have now, right? At that point, I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face at that point, right? The things that I wanted, I achieved that so quickly. And then the people that I wanted a relationship with, I outgrew those people, right? And a power greater than myself was able to put the next group of people into my life once I removed those people from my life, right? And it's just beautiful the way that life works like that.
So tell me now, what do you do for a living, or how do you help people? Because that's what you do every day, right?
Yeah,
You
right.
help people come out of the situation that you were in. Tell me a little bit about that and how you do that.
Yeah, so I'm blessed to have a position where, so I'm a CPRS supervisor. So what I do is I help work with people and guide people as they create whatever quality of life they want in recovery, right? So it's the same thing with recovery coaching. So I'm just a mentor, and I help people focus on like a personal recovery plan that for whatever goals that they want to set towards, and I just walk that path with them.
That's awesome.
And so as an overdose prevention specialist, what I do is I educate people on reducing stigma, the science of addiction, what's really happening, compassion fatigue, burnout, and I'm like a point for naloxone distributing throughout the Knox County.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
4 years ago, I bet you, like you said, you couldn't have even dreamed that you would be doing this.
No, I just assumed that I would always be doing warehouse work of some kind, right? Because the amount of self-worth that I had at that point, that's all I felt like I was worth.
Didn't know your value.
Right.
Right. So what would you say? You counsel a lot of people, you help them through this situation. What piece of advice is the most impactful? Or what could you say to someone who's watching this, who's not there yet, they're still in addiction and they don't see a future for their life and they don't have that hope? Like, what is one thing or a couple things that you could say to them that would help them get over that so that they can begin to recover as well?
I think that I would say that miracles happen every day, right? And as long as you want it as bad as you want to breathe, change is possible.
That's awesome. That's good. I love that. And you see change every day, don't you?
I do.
It's awesome
Yeah.
It's so encouraging to hear your story and stories like yours, and even for you to watch people walk out. I know there's hard times when people aren't successful, but man, every person that you get to help guide into a better life has got to be so encouraging for you, and just
being able to be a part of other people's journeys,
Yeah.
right? There's not a value that you can put on it. being able to see people have the light come on in their eyes and know that change is possible, and then actually achieve that 1 year, 2 years later, wherever they're at. That's what it's all about, man.
That's great. Okay, so I have one more question for you.
Okay.
And this is just something that we always talk about, because I think that the world sort of has a twisted understanding, or they don't know what love is. And so we feel called to talk about love. And so when you were living your old life and you were in addiction and in the relationships that you were in, tell us what you thought love looked like. But now today that you have come out of that, how love looks different to you.
Yeah, so I think in my before time, right, that love looked like people that were willing to share their liquor with me. They were willing to share their drugs with me. They were willing to help me sell drugs to make money, right? They were willing to smile on my face, but then when it came down to it, they really weren't there for me. And now, love is showing up for people, right? Love is being able to, when that first person is scared to go to their first meeting or go to treatment for the first time, or they're not really sure where they're going, but they know that they don't want to stay in the same place. Love is being there for that person, right? Being present and letting them know that it's not always easy, but it is always necessary.
Were there any particular organizations that that you wanted to just mention, or that where people could go if they needed help, or if they needed supplies? I know that you provide some supplies. Talk on just for a minute about where someone could go if they needed help.
Yeah, so in Knoxville we have what's called the Gateway, which is operated by Metro Drug Coalition. So the mission for Metro Drug Coalition is to help someone that's on the recovery path from any sort of substance abuse problems, right? So they have all kinds of different resources there. So what the Metro Drug Coalition focuses on is primary prevention, harm reduction, and recovery and support services, right? So if you haven't plugged into that, I would definitely plug into that. And also, so the state of Tennessee has what they call Tennessee Save a Life, which is what the regional overdose prevention specialists work on throughout the state. So if there's anyone that's struggling and they're not sure where to start, I would reach out to the ropes in their county.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that information and just for opening up and sharing your story. We believe that people get hope from seeing other people succeed and thinking, gosh, if they can do that, maybe I can too. And so I appreciate you being willing to share your story and just open up and be vulnerable about the things that you did and the journey that you're on. And so I just want to say thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.